This hidden vibe was about to shake up everything. Don't sleep on the surprises, hit like, share, and subscribe now. I never figured I'd end up in a spot like this, not in a million years. It all kicked off so chill. I was just sprawled out on my bed, scrolling through my phone, tossing my hair back, when my bedroom door creaked open. A light whiff of vanilla floated in, and there she was, my friend, Rachel Carter. I didn't expect her to roll in this early, especially not after the weird stuff that went down between us before. "Can you give me a hand with something?" Her voice was steady, almost too steady. A chill zipped down my back as she stepped in, her vibe taking over the room. She wasn't dressed for chores. Nope. She had on a snug tank top and comfy joggers. Her hair, usually pulled back in a tight bun, was cascading down her shoulders in loose curls. I froze up, my heart pounding as I stared at her. What was she after this time? "I was just gonna tidy up in here," she said, strolling over to my desk, her fingers grazing my stuff lightly. "But my back's been super stiff lately. Could you rub it out for me real quick?" My mouth went dry. I couldn't budge. Part of me wanted to bolt and say no way, but another part, the one I couldn't stand, just nodded like a dummy. "You know how to do that, right?" she asked, turning to me with a little smirk that said she already knew the answer. I couldn't even get words out. I was stuck, torn between what felt right and the heavy vibe in the room. The space felt cramped, the air thick with this unspoken weirdness between us. I forced myself to sit up, my hands shaky as I moved toward her. She turned her back to me, and I could see the soft outline of her shoulders through her tank top. The urge to reach out was strong, but I held off. "This'll help," she said softly, her voice smooth as she glanced back at me, her eyes locking on mine. The quiet stretched out, heavy and intense. My heart was racing. I couldn't tell if I was more freaked out or curious. When my fingers finally brushed her skin, a jolt shot through me. Her back was warm, and the smoothness of it hit me with this unexpected rush. I tried to focus on just helping her out, pushing away the mess of thoughts spinning in my head. This wasn't normal. None of it was. I felt her breath catch a little as I pressed gently into her tight shoulders. It wasn't some deep rub-down, just light pressure, but the way she leaned into it made me second-guess everything. She let out a quiet sigh, easing back like she wanted more from it. My hands picked up the heat coming off her, the faint vanilla scent still hanging around, and it took everything to stay on track. "Feels nice," she whispered, her tone low and almost too smooth. I couldn't look at her face, scared I'd catch something in her eyes I wasn't ready for. Something that'd make me want to pull back. But I didn't pull back. Something in me wouldn't let me. Her body shifted just a bit, enough for me to notice the way her spine curved, the slight arch as I worked her shoulders, feeling my own breath catch. She was so close, close enough that I could almost feel her heartbeat through her skin. Rachel adjusted her stance as I guided her through the stretch. Rachel adjusted her stance as I guided her through the stretch. A voice in my head was yelling at me to stop, to step away before it got too weird, but I didn't budge. "Keep going," she said, her voice carrying this little edge that made my pulse jump. "You're doing great." Rachel, my friend from yoga class, nodded as I helped her stretch out her stiff back. The vibe in the room got heavier every second. My hands weren't just resting on her back anymore. They were moving, sliding, pressing a little harder than I needed to. I couldn't stop myself. The more I tried to fight it, the more I wanted to lean into it. Was this a mistake? Was she really just asking for help? Or was I overthinking it? My head was all over the place, but every nerve in me was locked in, zeroed in on her. The feel of her under my hands, the warmth, the weight of it all. I couldn't shake it. It was like we were both inching toward something risky, something off limits, and I couldn't stop wondering what'd happen if I went too far. The room felt smaller by the minute. Her breathing got heavier, more intentional, like she was pulling me deeper into this strange moment. My hands kept moving, almost on autopilot, trying to stick to the task, but all I could think about was how her skin felt, how my fingers lingered a little too long in spots, how she shifted with every touch. "You okay?" I asked, my voice wobbly as the words slipped out. It wasn't just about the back rub anymore. It was about whatever was brewing between us, what she was hinting at, and what I was starting to feel. She didn't answer right off. Instead, Rachel Carter tilted her head slow and easy, locking those soft but sharp eyes on me. A little smirk played on her lips, way too knowing. My heart skipped, and I flicked my gaze away, suddenly hyper-aware of how close we were. "I'm good," she murmured, her fingers brushing my wrist real quick, sending a warm jolt through me. "But could you go a bit lower? Right here?" She pointed to the spot just above her hips, where her joggers hung loose. It sounded simple, but the way she said it, soft, almost teasing, cranked up the tension in the room, like she was nudging me to step over some line we both knew was there but never talked about. I paused. This ain't right buzzed in my head, but I couldn't pull the plug. Every gut feeling told me to bounce, but that part of me, the part I couldn't stand, wouldn't let go. My hands slid lower, and her breath hitched. I could feel her tense up under my fingers. Was she uncomfortable, or was it something else? I wasn't sure, but I kept going, caught between wanting her to be cool with it and chasing something for myself. "Nice," she whispered, her voice almost purring, and it twisted something deep in my chest. She leaned into my hands more, her body practically melting into the touch. It felt way too close, too personal, but I couldn't back off. The vanilla scent off her mixed with the warm air, making my head fuzzy. Right and wrong started blending together, and I didn't know if I was losing it or if she was steering me somewhere I couldn't climb out of. My heart thumped hard as she tilted her head again, her eyes hitting mine with a vibe I wasn't ready for. "You're doing awesome," she said, real soft. "Glad you're here." That smirk stuck with me. It wasn't just a smile. It was a sign everything had shifted, and there was no going back. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing in on us. The more I tried to focus on just helping her out, the more I noticed how her body reacted to every move I made. It was like she was reeling me into some trap, and no matter how hard I fought, I couldn't break free. Her eyes stayed glued to me, not just looking but digging in, waiting for my next step. I was stuck, pinned by my own choices. "Feel that?" she asked, her voice low, shifting under my hands again. I barely caught her words before she added, "This stiffness, it's been bugging me for days." I nodded, tongue-tied. The more I touched her, the more I picked up on this vibe between us, something heavy, deeper than I'd ever guessed. She wasn't just after a back rub, she was after something bigger, something I couldn't name. Her breath hitched again, louder now, and I felt her lean harder into my hands. The room's tension was off the charts, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep it together. Her hands, which had been chilling by her sides, slid up to her shoulders, like she was egging me on to push further, to ignore the limits I'd set in my head. "You're good at this," she murmured, her voice thick with something unsaid. "Didn't think you'd be this good." My chest tightened up, and I couldn't get a word out. This weird excitement was building in me, knowing this was off, but feeling like it fit somehow, in a risky kind of way. She shifted again, turning just enough to pull me in closer, like she was daring me to step up. But that voice in my head kept yelling, "Stop, think about what's on the line." Then I caught her eyes, dark, intense, almost pulling me in. "I think you know what I really need," she said soft, her words hanging there like a test. The room buzzed with this electric feel I couldn't pin down. Every part of me screamed to hit the brakes, to walk out, but my hands, they didn't care. I could feel her breathing, her body brushing against me just enough to notice. I wasn't just rubbing her back anymore, I was crossing into something else, and I couldn't tell if I wanted to stop or if I was already too deep to pull back. Everything felt foggy now, like I was stuck in some dream I couldn't snap out of. Rachel Carter's vibe was pulling me in hard, and with every little move she made, every soft breath she let out, the difference between right and wrong got fuzzier. I knew I should step back, but the closer I got to the edge, the tougher it was to hit the brakes. Her hands, which had been chilling on her lap, slid up slow, brushing the sides of her tank top before settling just above her hips. It was no accident. That move sent my heart racing. My breath got stuck as I watched her, unable to peel my eyes away. Was she waiting for me to make a move, or was she just as caught up as I was? "You can touch me, you know," she said, her voice low but clear enough to send a shiver down my back. Her dark, intense eyes locked on mine, like she was daring me to take that last step. I froze. The room went quiet, heavy with her words hanging there like a test I didn't want to take. My hands were still on her back, but now they felt out of place, like they didn't belong. This off-limits vibe burned through me, and for a sec, I didn't even know who I was. "You've been awesome," she whispered, her tone softer now, almost like a hum. "But I think it's time you quit holding back." My fingers twitched, giving me away, like they were already jumping at her hint. This wasn't just a back rub anymore. The room felt too tight, too crowded for whatever was going down. Her warmth hit me in waves, and every touch felt like a jolt. The tension was thick, choking me out. I couldn't think straight. My body was moving faster than my brain could catch up. I wanted to bail, to get out, but the closer I came to pulling away, the more I wanted to stay. "It's just us here," she murmured, her voice slicing through the quiet. "No one's gotta know." Those words stuck with me, and I could feel my willpower crumbling. I was right on the edge of something risky, and no matter how bad I wanted to turn around, I couldn't. The moment was too intense, everything felt wrong. But right then, it was like I didn't have a choice but to keep going. Her words lingered, and my pulse was pounding as I stood at the tipping point. My hands weren't just rubbing her back anymore, they were sliding along the edges of her tank top, hanging out where the fabric barely covered her. I'd stepped into shaky ground, and every move pulled me deeper into something I couldn't climb out of. "You're not stopping, are you?" she asked, her voice a soft tease that shook me up. I couldn't get a word out, stuck between wanting it and feeling bad about it. Her body shifted again, leaning into me, her chest brushing mine just enough to notice. The heat off her was too much, making my heart pound harder. Rachel laughed as she almost lost balance during our stretch. I tried to push back against it, but it was pointless. The gap between us was shrinking with every breath, and I was getting pulled in deeper than I could handle. "Don't be scared," she murmured, like she could feel me hesitating. "I'm right here with you. You can trust me." Her words were calm, but loaded, making it tough to breathe. I wanted to stop. I needed to, but everything in me was yelling to keep going, especially with her this close, with the pull this strong. I took a deep breath to steady myself, but the vanilla scent off her, mixed with the warm room, messed with my focus. Her hand slid over mine, nudging it lower, guiding me like she knew exactly what she wanted. My chest tightened as her fingers grazed my wrist, steering me with this smooth control that left me winded. "Just a bit more," she whispered, her lips so close to my ear I could feel her warm breath. "You've come this far. Don't back out now." Rachel grinned as I pushed her leg a little higher during our stretch routine. Her body shifted again, and this time there was no going back. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing tight as I let my hands keep moving. My fingers shook, but I couldn't stop. Her eyes stayed on mine, and right then, I realized she wasn't just dragging me into this moment. She was pulling me into her space, a place where lines didn't matter, where every touch was a slow slide into giving in. "Just feel it," she urged, her voice firm but gentle. "Let go and feel it." And I did. I couldn't fight it. The weight of it all was too heavy to push back. I wanted this to stop, but my body wasn't having it. Every bit of me was wrapped up in her touch, in the way she pressed closer. It felt like time froze, and nothing else mattered outside this bubble. All the rules, the lines I used to know, they were gone. The only thing that counted was this. My whole body was buzzing, every nerve on edge, torn between wanting to pull back and this stronger tug to stay, to keep going. The air in the room crackled, loaded with something risky, something off limits. I was teetering right on the brink, and every breath I took pulled me closer to tipping over. Rachel Carter's voice cut through again, soft but firm. "You're not scared of me, are you?" That hit me hard. Not exactly fear, but something way messier, deeper. My heart was pounding, my head yelling at me to quit, but my hands, they stayed on her, moving, following her vibe. I started, but the words wouldn't come. I couldn't figure out how to unpack the chaos spinning inside me. I didn't want to be here, didn't want this, but I couldn't make myself walk away either. She tilted her head a little, her eyes narrowing with this look that said she got it. "It's cool. You don't need to stress," she said with a light chuckle, turning all the way toward me. We were inches apart now, the heat between us thick. I could feel her chest moving with every breath, and it just cranked the tension higher. "You sure you want to stop now?" she asked, her voice low and kind of playful, but there was an edge to it, something that gave me chills, part nerves, part hype. 'Cause I'm not stopping. It was a straight-up challenge, and I knew it. If I didn't hit the brakes right then, there'd be no rewind. But I was stuck, caught in her flow, and every piece of me was screaming to give in, to let go. Her eyes laid it all out. This wasn't just about a back rub, not about helping her chill. This was something else completely. I was shaky now, stuck between wanting to bolt and knowing I couldn't break free from her pull. "You won't regret this," she whispered, her lips brushing my ear so light it barely registered. "Just let go." In that foggy moment, I felt myself leaning in, hooked on her in a way I couldn't shake. The nerves, the second-guessing, they faded as I closed the gap. Right and wrong had blurred out ages ago, and when our lips met, I knew there was no turning back. Rachel smiled as I pecked her cheek after our stretch session. This hidden vibe was going to change everything. Don't miss the surprises. Hit like, share, and subscribe now.
This is an artistic and fictional creation intended for both entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. Some scenes and dialogues in the video are part of a dramatized performance and incorporate elements of grotesque, satire, and exaggeration. The creator stands against discrimination, violence, and hatred. This channel fully complies with YouTube's policies and does not infringe upon copyright laws.